Want to supercharge your motivation? Keep watching. This is Life Mastery Gym. I'm Damon Card, and I teach people just like you cutting-edge NLP processes and techniques so that you can master your life and take charge of your destiny. So if that sounds good, make sure you click that subscribe button right down here so you can get these videos on a regular basis. I've been studying, practicing, and teaching NLP for years, and in that time, I've learned how to unlock the power of metaphor, especially for achieving what it is that I want, and also helping my clients achieve what it is they want. So by the end of this video, you're going to have a much better understanding of how that works, and I'm also going to give you the process I use to include metaphor in my goal setting process so that it supercharges your motivation to get what it is that you want and achieve that goal. So there's a time to use metaphor and there's a time not to use metaphor. There's really powerful ways that metaphors can help you, but there's also a limitation to them as well. And it's so important to really understand what those are. Because if you don't use metaphors at the right time, or if you use them too much, it can actually cause a problem. So let's talk about why that is and how can you get the most out of metaphor. The power of metaphor is that it can transfer information across contexts. And in fact, I think it's the Greek language is where the word metaphor comes from, and it actually means transportation. Now, I've never been to Greece, but I understand that trucks that transport goods or materials, it actually has the word metaphor on it because that's what it means. So how does that transfer to how we use metaphor? Well, if you think about a symbol, how a symbol has a lot of meaning in it. And that meaning can generalize very widely because there's not a lot of detail to it. So for example, say a heart, means love, but there's so many different types of love. There's family love, there's being in love, so one symbol doesn't tell you the details of what exactly that type of love is. It just symbolizes love, but it's very universal. You don't have to speak English. You could speak a different language entirely, but you see that symbol and everybody knows what it means. Doesn't matter what language you speak. So that's the power of a symbol. Now, the drawback or the limitation to it is, again, you don't have a lot of detail as to how to do that. So how do you love? How do you fall in love, or how do you show love to a family, or how you bring a family together through love? The heart's not going to tell you that. And it's the same thing like a dove symbolizes peace. Again, it's pretty universal. Maybe not all cultures and all countries recognize a dove as symbolizing peace, but it certainly goes across many cultures. But it doesn't tell us how to make peace. It doesn't give us the instructions. It doesn't give us the details. Another example of the power of metaphor, but also the limitation, is when I think about the state that I live in. I live in California, and there's the California flag. It has a bear on it. And when I see that California flag, because I live in California, it makes me think of California and what I love about California and my overall perception of California. And if another person from California sees that flag, in very general terms, they probably experience the same thing. They think about what California means to them. So in a sense, we're having that shared experience that we're thinking about what California means to us. But of course, that's not going to be the same exact way. I'm going to have a different understanding or a different way of cultivating that meaning than that other person will. To me, it might mean surfing and redwood trees because I live in Northern California, whereas for somebody from Southern California, it might be surfing, but more sandy beaches rather than the rocky beaches that I live next to. So there's going to be so many differences about it, but the general shared experience is the California experience. Now, the interesting thing too is the American flag symbolizes America and all of its states. About half the states in this country I have not even been to. But when I see an American flag and somebody from a state who I've never been to, I've never met that person, they see an American flag, what happens? We think about what America means to us and what it means to live in America, to be a citizen of this country. So a similar sort of shared experience in a very general level. But if I went into saying very specific details about, what it is to be an American, it might be completely different than that person's understanding or the way that they think about it. So now I'm going to bring the example to more of a one individual kind of way. How would you use this? Let's say that in my memories and how I represent all of the qualities and all of the things that I like about myself, and even the things that I don't like about myself, I represent them in very literal memories about each one of those things. So let's say I believe I'm a very persistent person. And when I think about, well, how do I know I'm a persistent person? I have all these memories that come up of me being very persistent, like very detailed, specific memories. Now, that's not symbol or metaphor. It's exactly the opposite. It's literal detail. So what's good about that is I have sort of the map and the instructions about how to be persistent. So when I think about, oh yeah, I need to draw on my persistence, well, there it is. I have all the instructions all there and all these memories that are very literal and very detailed. Now, what if they were all metaphor? What if they were all symbols of being persistent? I would probably have a very strong feeling of persistence. I would probably feel very motivated to be persistent, but I wouldn't know how. So metaphors give us a very strong feeling of whatever it is we want to experience. And so if I'm achieving a goal and I need persistence, well, a metaphor would be very important to really giving me that motivation, to empowering me. But it doesn't tell me how to achieve that goal. It doesn't give me the details. This reminds me of a story of one time when I was teaching an abbreviated workshop. It was a short workshop of the self-concept model. The self-concept model is a model that my mentor created and that I teach now. And there was a person sitting to my left, and as I was giving out the instructions, he kept looking really confused. So I was doing a little bit of teaching, and then I was giving people instructions to do the exercises. And everybody was doing the exercises, but he would often look frustrated. And then finally, he stopped me and said, "I can't do anything that you're asking everyone to do." And I looked around and I kind of checked in, were my instructions clear or not? And everybody else was fine with it, but he was not. Now, he seemed very, very eager and motivated, but he couldn't seem to follow the instructions. And so we got to talking for a little bit, and I started to notice something about this person. It was almost like he was wearing a costume. He was wearing a hat. He was wearing a lot of symbols, a lot of bracelets. He was wearing a lot of necklaces. And I started to realize something. There was a lot of symbols. And so when I say symbols, in this case, symbols and metaphors, I'm really using them interchangeably. So I started noticing he adorned himself with a lot of symbols. And so I started asking him about his memories. I was like, "Tell me about your memories. What, when you were a kid, when you were learning to ride a bike, or, I just started asking him sort of random, easy to access memories. He never gave me any specific detail about his memories. Everything was symbolic. Everything was like an analogy. Well, it was like this. Or, he would give a metaphor about what it was like. And then I said, okay, I've got it here. So it all started to make sense. He was very eager. He was very motivated because he had taken a lot of his experiences and transformed them into symbols and into metaphors and analogies. So he felt them very strongly. And you can take a lot of experiences and compress them into symbols, and they will feel very, very powerful when you think about them. But again, you lose that detail. Metaphors are very, very general. And so they lack that specific detail. And this sort of detached him from reality, and it made it very hard for him to follow specific instructions, especially if I'm giving instructions about, okay, now think about this, now do this, and it's more of a mental practice. He really couldn't connect to it. Now, the best thing to do here is to have a balance. You want to have a balance of literal memories that sort of tell you how to be what it is you want to be, or tell you how to access the resources you need to access in order to achieve goals. And it's good to have some symbols and metaphors built into that, so you have that generalized motivation, and those symbols and metaphors can, like I said, they can transport across context to context. And what I mean by context here is your life context. So let's say you have a lot of passion in one area of your life, and maybe your symbol for passion is a purple heart, not a red heart, like a purple heart. And so you maybe have a lot of passion in one area of your life, like say your hobbies, but in your work or your career you don't, or in your relationship you don't. Well, if you think of a heart and that heart really feels like it symbolizes passion for you, well, you can just take that heart and think about it as having that heart in these other contexts. your career, your relationship, and see how that feels. And what it'll do is it'll generalize that information. But if your hobbies have nothing, if the literal details of what your hobbies are have nothing to do with your career, and the literal details of what your hobbies are have nothing to do with your relationship, like they're just completely different things, they're not gonna generalize over. And this is the power of symbols and metaphors. They can generalize over to many contexts in your life. But the literal memories that you have are going to be pretty specific to whatever context they're in. Okay, so now that you sort of have an understanding about the pros and cons of metaphors and how they should be used and when to use them, let's tie this all together and talk about how to actually put this together. How are you going to use this? Or more specifically, how do I use this to set goals and really motivate myself? So the first step that I do is I take something that I want. We have multiple contexts in our lives, and I get specific. Okay, what is the context? Let's say it's my career, and what is it that I want? Maybe I want to grow my business. Okay, I want to grow my business. What is important to me about that? And so I elicit my values. I've done several videos on this, and I will also put a PDF in the description right here down below. You just click the link and you'll get a free copy of the PDF on how to elicit your values. So I'm not going to go into it here. You realize what it is you want, whatever context it is that you want it, and you elicit the values behind it, and you go really high level. You go to those highest values. Now, once you know what those high level values are, those are very close to being metaphors because they're very high level, they're intangible. There's not a lot of details about what they are, so they're really easy to then shift into symbols or metaphors. And so from there, it's like a canvas in front of me. I project those values out in front of me. And I do that with colors, and I do that with symbols, and I do that with metaphors, sort of like a vision board. So there's not a lot of specific detail about how to achieve this goal. That's not the point of this, though. But I have this sort of vague vision of what it will be like in front of me. I have this vague vision of what achieving that goal will be like, and it's based on my highest values. So the motivation is already built in. I'm looking at this and I'm like, wow, yes, I want that. Can I just jump into that pool of awesomeness in front of me? And I liken this to a vision board, but it's so much more powerful than a vision board, because a vision board is, it's usually like pictures that you've gotten out of a magazine or printed off the internet or something like that. So they probably have a lot of specific detail, which is okay. But it's probably, not quite how you imagine it. Well, you have complete creative freedom in creating your vision in front of you. So you just put it all out there and you can make changes whenever you want. And the other part about it that's really awesome is that it stays right there. If there's no resistance to having that vision out in front of you, which I can't imagine there would be because this is what you highly value, you're taking this wherever you go, and it is there whether or not you're conscious of it. So even if you're sleeping, it's still there. Even when you're thinking about other things, that vision is still there, pulling you, drawing you, motivating you to go in this direction. It's not like a vision board that is on your wall that you only see, a few times a day. And nothing against vision boards. If you like your vision board, I'm not telling you need to take it down. I'm just saying, wouldn't it be amazing to have your own vision board built in that goes with you everywhere you go and constantly motivates you? That's the power of metaphor and symbol. Now, we're not done though. We go back to the goal. Now, your goal needs to be specific. Your vision is not. Your vision is just more about the direction you want to go in. And what's great about a vision is it opens you up to change, to be adaptable, to be flexible, to even let go of the goal if you realize that the goal itself is not going to serve you. Or maybe you achieve the goal and you realize it doesn't serve me. Well, you're not lost here. You still got the vision. And that happens to a lot of people. They achieve a goal and it doesn't fulfill them, and they feel completely lost, especially if they've worked toward this goal for many, many years. And they achieve it and they have, I don't know, some level of fulfillment for about an hour, and they go, oh, that's it? And what do I do now? And then the person oftentimes will set another goal and then go chasing it. They'll will themselves and discipline themselves only to achieve another goal and then experience temporary fulfillment. But when you have a vision, it's different. When you have that vision, you know what fulfills you. It's something much bigger, but you don't know exactly how it's going to happen or how it's going to show up. So you have more adaptability and flexibility. So you go back to the goal and you get specific about the goal. Goals need to be specific. If they're not specific, there's no way to measure whether or not we're getting closer to it, or if maybe some of the things that we're doing are pushing us further away from it. So you want to be very specific about a goal. So if my goal is to grow my business, what does it mean to grow my business? What would that mean for me? And how does it connect with my values? You would get very specific, like numerical metrics on what it would take to grow your business. What does that mean? And how would you know it when you're there? And so, of course, your goal could be anything. It doesn't have to be about business. It could be about relationships. It could be about socializing. It could be about losing weight, getting healthier, what have you. In fact, getting healthier is a very easy one. You can point out a very specific weight that you want to get yourself down to. You can think about, where you want your cholesterol to be, where you want your blood pressure to be. So all these would be very specific goals. And then what you do is so when you know what that very specific goal is, you sort of align it to looking at it as it being there somewhat here in front of you, but also between you and your vision, as if there's like a light shining through your goal to your vision. When you align your goal to a vision like that, look out, because you will have endless motivation to achieve it. And at the same time, you'll be able to throw it out too if it's not really working for you. If you start getting closer and closer to that goal, this has happened to me many times. If you start getting closer and closer to that goal, and the closer you get, you realize, this isn't doing it. This isn't really going to help me get to that vision. You just throw the goal out. So many people are so unwilling to quit on their goals or throw their goals out, thinking that that makes them a quitter. And at the same time, it's not fulfilling them, and they don't know why. It's because they don't know what their values are, and they don't have a greater vision beyond that. So they feel like, well, if they let go of the goal, then they're completely lost and they don't know what to do. And then they just feel bad about themselves because they quit on something. You don't ever have to experience that ever again. Know what your values are, have that vision out in front of you, be specific about the goal, have a way to know whether or not you're getting closer or further away from your goal. And as you get closer to it, make sure it is fulfilling. It's a part that fulfills your vision. And if it's not, then you just simply get rid of it. And you don't ever have to feel bad about quitting on a goal. If it doesn't fulfill you, what's the point? So like I said, if you want to learn how to elicit your values, make sure you go down to the description here, click that link, and you'll get a free PDF on how to elicit your values, and then get straight to work on creating your vision and then setting a goal that will align with your vision. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button and also click that bell so you'll be notified when I put new videos out, which is typically on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Last but not least, if you can think of a friend or a family member who would benefit from this video, make sure you pass it on. Make sure you share it with them. Take care.